Okay, so welcome everybody to another special edition of our Do One Thing Well webinar series. My name is Adam Corcoran. I'm the Technical Sales Engineer for Esri Ireland, and I'm joined today by David Gawley, who's the BIM Consultancy Director of Pentagon Solutions. Okay, so today we're going to walk you through all things BIM, GIS integration. David has some amazing demos to show us all today. So I suppose we'll get into it straight away. So I suppose this is for a mix of customers, both on the Pentagon and the Esri side. So for those of you who might be unfamiliar with GIS, let me just clear that out of the way in 60 seconds or less. So you might be asking yourself one of three questions. You might be asking, well, what is GIS? Who are Esri? And if you know the answer to those two already, you might be wondering why, the GIS guy has a building in the background of his slides. Okay, and these are all valid questions. So let's deal with the first one. And I suppose, what is GIS? It stands for Geographical Information Systems. And to me, it's three sequential building blocks. Okay, so we have geographical, which is based in geography. It's the science of our world. It's, how we understand the environment around us. Secondly, we have information, which could be providing content, such as points on a map, and context, then attributed information about, how things occur, why they occur at a given location. And through that, then we can, bring it into analysis. We can understand patterns at a given location. And then finally, the system part of it is just to provide a common reference system. So it's to put it all into something like a digital mapping platform, such as ArcGIS. And the one benefit, the one beauty of having a system tied on to your geographical information is that it's a single source of truth for everybody. Okay, so the various business units, teams, and project workers all have a common reference system for their spatial data. And then tying it all together, GIS helps us to see complexity at given locations, helps us to understand relationships, patterns, and associations, brings it all again into a single source of truth. And who are Esri? Well, Esri provide ArcGIS, which is the world's leader in GIS solutions. And how we are the world leader, I suppose the global leader in GIS solutions, is that we deliver powerful capabilities across organizations and across our Irish customer base, North and South, UK, Europe, and going further. Okay, so it is truly a global company, and all sorts of people use GIS, from county councils, government agencies, private sector, real estate agents, telco organizations, all sorts of people use it for different purposes. And I suppose the key thing to take away from that is that GIS can deliver powerful capabilities across organization, whether that's a single person sitting in a team, working away on a GIS project, mapping out something, for their boss, data visualization, then all the way up to C-suite. You might have field operations where you have contractors and you want them to deliver field work via our mobile or tablet apps. So they're out in the field working offline. They then get to sync that data back into your organization's ArcGIS account. And then you might want to use it for analysis, data science, and dashboards as well. I suppose the last question was, you might be wondering why the GIS guy. If you knew what GIS is and who Esri are, you might be wondering why the GIS guy has a picture of a building in the background of his slide. And that's because of today's webinar. We're going to talk about BIM GIS integration. And I suppose, we share that middle letter I, right, in our acronyms. But also then, from an Esri standpoint, we have a global partnership with Autodesk, which means that user of Autodesk products such as AutoCAD can readily integrate their GIS data. So, it's a direct point of integration. We provide plugins for AutoCAD. We're also partners with Microsoft, so if you want to integrate your Power BI solutions or your Excel spreadsheets, we have numerous partners. Autodesk is one of those. A really great benefit of this partnership for GIS users across the globe has been, direct reads of Revit models and the associated disciplines, are now direct reads in ArcGIS Pro, or desktop software. And I suppose if I could sum it up, GIS informs BIM by providing spatial awareness, all this rich spatial data that you can have. Your BIM models do not exist in isolation. They're part of the environment, and as such, they should be treated in terms of analysis, not as, a single point on a map. But also then BIM fuels GIS by providing these really information-rich Revit models and associated data sets. And so I'm going to hand over to David now, who's going to give us a little bit of background on BIM.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Just checking you can hear me okay.
And you're now a presenter.
Cheers, Adam. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can indeed.
Perfect.
And
thanks very much for that.
A few other people can as well. Yeah.
Okay, so as Adam said, my name is David Gawley from Pentagon Solutions, and what I'm going to talk about a little bit about what BIM is, who are Pentagon, and why integrate, and we're going to essentially do that through a technology session. So this will be for the next 25 minutes or so, and then I'll hand you back to Adam in there. So what is BIM? There's many different terms around this, but essentially building information modeling, it's the process for designing, constructing, operating a building or infrastructure asset, essentially using digital object-oriented information. You might hear people talk about things such as you build something twice, you build it digitally and you build it for real, but it is about people, processes, and technology, and working in a collaborative manner, all from the start of a project, from concept to planning, design, when we actually build it, right up the operation. And that's the key thing for asset owners in there. Sometimes it's easier to talk about the actual exclusions in there. It's not just about a single model. It's not just a database solely for buildings, and it's for small, medium, and large projects as well as part of that. So who are Pentagon Solutions? We're based in Belfast, Cork, and London. Our business is split into three areas. We're data management specialists, so we essentially work a lot in the energy, utility, construction, and pharma industry. They're heavily regulated, so they need to manage their data. We also provide BIM authoring and model aggregation solutions that Adam already talked about there through Autodesk and software. And we also look at construction intelligence or how BIM projects work. And finally, we provide BIM consultancy to many private and public clients all throughout the UK and Ireland, actually worldwide as well as part of that. So the next slide in here is really maybe talking about some of the misconceptions of BIM. Yes, the model-driven process is very, very important as part of that. And in here, you can actually see a rich data model. You can see the architectural, you can see the structural, you can see the mechanical information in there, and that's very important as part of that process. But process equally so is very important as part of BIM, and so are roles and responsibilities. And you'll see this at the very end of the video, and Adam hitting this as well, because at the end of the day, we need a single source of truth. We need to know that asset information, that we have that information once in the right place and in the right container. And that's very important from the operation phases of a project. So looking at the key components of BIM in there, essentially we would start with client requirements or appointing party requirements in there, as we commonly talk about them. So they set very clearly what they want from project deliverables. The stakeholders, the delivery team actually responds, from contractors, supply chain, etc. They respond, they build information models, they build outputs, PDFs, schedules as part of that, geospatial information. And that's where the informed decision making comes from. We do this in a collaborative manner. So we share information through a structured standards, and we're singing off the same sheet, so to speak, as part of this process. And we use a range of different technology to use this. So the technology is not prescriptive. You're going to see some good examples today of some of the technology workflows as well. We do this to standards and frameworks such as BSI, ISO, etc. And we have roles and responsibilities or functions to actually make sure that the project deliverables are being met. The information part is key because it's handed over at different stages for the stakeholders and delivery team, ultimately the client to make decisions on that, and everything's spatially coordinated and connected, as you'll see through the presentation. And if we do that, we get a quality deliverable as part of our process. And now there are some of the main components that constitute BIM. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through a technical presentation for the remaining 25 minutes or so and give some examples of this. These are pre-recorded videos. I will come out at one stage and show a wee bit of some live information. We did this at a previous event at Belfast and Dublin. And again, these slides will be made available. So first of all, I'm going to take this from the starting point of the civil engineer. So we're in a BIM authoring product in here. I have a road corridor. I have a school that's proposed nearby. I can interrogate the information in the road corridor. I can look at the different sections. You can see the elevation up in the top right. And that's very important. Just because we see it in 2D, it's still a 3D model in there. So to give an example of this, if I look at my long sections, you can see the volume of cut or fill. If I slightly tweak my road design in the long section, it updates the 3D model in the background and it updates the cut and fill. So we're actually got that connection where we change a change in one view is represented by a change in all the views. Equally so, I've got my digital terrain model here. I can interrogate the information. I can see the flow arrows, change the contours. We can change that back. We can actually look at things like a water drop. So if I dropped a bit of water on the surface, where would it run off to? That would be important from my design process in there. So really, I'm considering this from the civil engineering aspect in here. Even going back to traditional CAD tools, if I took a line across the road on the site, I can actually very quickly see my long section. So I can get quick visual inspections of that very, very easily as part of the process. Again, I can change that surface back. All the objects are actually intelligent. They are 3D. We're only looking at it from a plan perspective. Now, I'm introducing the Northern Ireland mapping in the background here. So it's just the vector mapping. This site is somewhere outside Belfast. And then I'm introducing the BIM mapping services that's going to bring in the aerial photography as well. So it's actually, because everything's spatially coordinated, it knows that it's Irish grid, it understands all this information, it knows that the actual drawing is in meters. You can see there the report coming out latitude and longitude, and the Irish grid as well in the background. So the designer would work as part of this, moving forward as part of the project. How I'm going to start by introducing some GIS data. I'm going to start by adding in shape files. We're going to go from shape files, geodatabase, to ArcGIS Online. So the shape files will come in and they're little pointers of information that actually style it when I'm bringing it into the civil 3D environment. So you can see as I zoom out and zoom in, the lights of the electricity pylon will appear, and that's classified from the Ordnance Survey Northern Ireland data. And again, the lights of the houses and the commercial data will come in from the large scale mapping data set. But it does have the data behind it. So this is being introduced directly into the BIM authoring environment. So as I theme it, as I come out and I zoom in, it actually pops out the data and brings in the data that I actually need to consume. Now, sometimes it's not practical to use shape files all the time because that's an export process, and we'll want to actually connect to a geodatabase, and we can do that. So if we maybe traditionally use an ArcMap, or we've got a geodatabase we want to access in our work environment, we can do that. So I'm connecting into the GDB directly. I can connect into a file database as well. So I'm going to add in here some of the open data. And this is the Department for Infrastructure streetlight data, because really I need to put some context surrounding my design of the school and design of the road in there. So that will get added in, and I can actually then theme that. The important factor here is that it's actually connected into the geodatabase that's got all the rich data, and I can actually make a change as well in the BIM authoring environment. So really what I want to do is crop out my information I just need around my scheme. So I've got the school, I've got the road. So it's only going to bring the information in. And then I want to theme it. Now the ArcGIS user, my user, a different way to theme. I want to theme it that's more suitable maybe for my environment. So we can look at the style. I can set a range as well. So as I zoom in, the objects will appear or disappear. So if I make this red and probably increase the width of it, and I'll add a bit of a feature label in here against the point style. So this is existing street light data that is available in Northern Ireland, and as I zoom in, you'll get to see the data appear and the column references actually appear in there. Now, if I need to change that information, I can actually check a feature out. That checks it out from the geo database. So again, someone from ArcGIS or maybe traditionally ArcMap could be accessing this. I can change the actual property data, and then I can commit that change and save that back again. So even though I'm working in a BIM authoring environment, there's no translation or export as part of this process in here. That information can be brought in directly in there. Okay, so I'm going to swap connect now to ArcGIS Online. So we've looked at shapefiles, we've looked at geodatabase. We're going to, best method in here is to actually connect to ArcGIS Online. So because I'm added into the organization, Adam has given some information about drive time distances from the school. So we've got 5, 10, and 15 minutes. Again, this would be important from the design process. This is what the ArcGIS user is going to do. I need to consume that as part of the designer to see that I'm actually meeting the criteria. The good thing about this is I can actually theme this information very easily. So I can actually have a look at it. So again, I'm going to connect back in again to ArcGIS through the connector. And we're going to add in the proposed streetlights. So we've got some proposed streetlight that we want to actually introduce, and that's maybe being dealt with in ArcGIS, or that could be coming from collector or survey information on site, which we'll talk about later on. So again, I go in to my organization and I simply add that details in. Again, we can change the theme of how these appear. So they're just coming in as squares at this stage. I'm going to theme this and change the information. We don't have to do this every time. We can set it up as a configuration so it does come in as a layer, or what's called a pointer to the data, so it normally consumes it. So I'm going to put this in as a triangle. Look at the feature attributes. Let's add the serial number in against that, and you'll get to see the serial number come in. So those two sources of information, one's coming from ArcGIS Online, one's coming from the geo database. As any updates are being applied, they're actually being consumed and updated directly in the drawing when we refresh this information, and equally so, we can edit this. But being a traditional BIM authoring user, we still have outputs from our model, and we still produce traditional outputs for Wayleys and planning, etc. in there. So we're going to produce an actual plan. We want to share this information out. So I can pick up on the reference system, which is Irish Grid. As I zoom in and out, you can see the grid coordinates will actually change and update. So we're not having to manually add this in. So I get my reference points, and then I can add a bit of a legend table in the top right. I'm traditionally now going back to some of my CAD features just to scale that up a wee bit. The good thing about this is that we can publish this information out as a PDF, or we can publish it as DWF, or publish it online. But we can take the data with it. Because it's connected into a live data source, you might want to capture it as a point in time. So you can see in here, as I select one of the lights, the actual property data comes up against that in the actual background in there. So it's a very powerful way to actually use and consume that information. Okay, so that's shown it from the civil perspective. I'm going to show this a little bit further from the modeling perspective in here for the civil engineer or the utility operator. You can see in here I have my 3D pipes and I've got the chambers or manholes. So it understands the invert level, it understands the cover level of the pipe. If I decide to change the invert level of the pipe in the elevation, it'll update the 3D view and it'll update the actual schedule. But the challenge for many asset owners is that they mightn't natively manage it in this environment. They want to publish it to their GIS system or ArcGIS. So we want to publish all these handover assets and get them into ArcGIS. So we can use our connector tool to actually publish this data, give it the features, or give it the objects, intelligent objects we want to publish, which is our storm system. We will give this a name and we will assign it out to our organization. So it understands the features, it's classified those as points and lines. So I'll give it the service name. I can put some tags in against this as well and give it a summary. And it'll collate all that property data because it knows the spatial location of it, and it'll publish this to ArcGIS Online, and it will publish all the asset information with it as well. So I'm going to look at my storm handover, publish it into my content or my organization level, and then I can view that directly in ArcGIS. So I'll use my login as part of that, and you'll get to see the actual pipes appear, you'll get to see the manholes, and you'll get to see all the attribute data with it. So this is an excellent way if you have any BIM handover data that you actually need to publish this information out. We can actually take this further in this. We can have bidirectional links, which you'll see a wee bit about later on as well. So all the information is rich, the likes of the diameter, the length, the slope, the start and end invert, all that data is actually transferred across directly to ArcGIS in there. Okay, for the next bit, I'm just going to quit out of a PowerPoint and I'm going to do this live, and I'm just going to show the Revit environment. This is maybe from the architect or the mechanical engineer's perspective in there, or the structural engineer. You can see I have my different models in here. I have my streetlights as well around the model, but really the bit I'm interested in is getting some information through here. So I'm not going to save that. Just quit out of my site. And there's some data that I want to populate in the table. So because the BIM authoring system can connect the likes of databases, we could publish this. Now I have published this through Esri through SQL here, so we know that we can make joins as well as part of that process. So I'm simply going to import this information. I'm going to use an import tool in here. I'm going to pick up on it and hit OK. And it's going to import all that lighting fixture asset information. It'll give me an opportunity to validate it. It gives me an audit report as well as part of that, so I can keep that as part of my handover process, which I'm just going to ignore and minimize. So you can see the asset information actually is getting caught as part of that. Again, I can change my schedule in there. So I've got the contact details, the contractors, the KPI score as part of that. If I go back into my actual model, again, you can see the background of OSNI data as well. If I actually select my properties, that information is being populated in here. And even if I go back into my schedule environment in here, so if I look at some of my lighting fixture schedules, we've added in the likes of some links. Just going to move that. So if I've got a link here to ArcGIS Online, which actually connected me back into my asset record. I've just done it through a simple link. So this is a good way to consider asset handover information if you want to make sure that's in the BIM authoring environment. It's the same for the likes of any site information in here, and I'll touch on a wee bit about this later on. This is using InfraWorks, where we have aggregated information for the actual site. So you can see my surrounding model and some context in there. I can go back down into the first person. I've got multiple controls. You'll see it'll hit the likes of gravity or the ground. You can walk along there. Unfortunately, I'm just walking on the ground a wee bit. So I'm just going to come out of that and go back in the orbit. There we go. And we can actually interrogate any of the information and data behind that. So if I actually pick the lamppost, you can see the property information as well. You can see that Adam is the creator of that, and we've migrated that information back in. Back in the Revit lastly as well, you can have links back into the asset information. And we've really migrated this information back in from a database. So we've got a photograph in there, and then we have an instruction, a user manual instruction in there. Again, this information can come from a common data environment online as part of that process. So it just shows the different ways with how we can actually connect in information or geospatial information in there as well as part of that. Okay, so for the next bit, I'm going to go back into my slides or presentations in here. Just excuse me where I get the right place. Essentially, the civil engineer may want to communicate that site. So we can bring in that GIS information, but they may want to communicate that site back to the architect or the designer. So we can publish this DTM online, numerous different ways to do this. So we can publish the surface out. This means that the actual BIM authoring user from the architectural perspective can actually link that topography back in through the services, and it'll come directly into the model. And doesn't need to make any adjustments for meters and millimeters in there. It knows that the Revit model is in millimeters and the site model is in meters, and everything is Irish grid. So it comes in as expected as part of that. Okay, so we've looked from a civil environment. We've looked from the, say, architectural and planning environment in here. What we're going to do is look from an aggregated model and early conceptual planning. This is using InfraWorks in here. The data behind here is Ordnance Survey Northern Ireland data. It's very rich. It's the 16.5 centimetre orthophotography. It's their digital terrain model as well. It's actually using their large scale mapping. And you can actually see the electric pylons there are classified from their data. The buildings are actually classified and the roads are classified as they come in. And this is aggregated as part of the overall model. So it's very data rich. Again, this could be data that comes from Ordnance Survey GB, Ordnance Survey Ireland. This data set's from Ordnance Survey Northern Ireland. You can see our DFI lighting in there, our open source lighting as well. You can use online free sources as well of data that can actually aggregate these models. There's a thing called Model Builder that'll build this in InfraWorks. And what we've added in here is some utility data. So I've got some utility information and I've aggregated this in the model. So where this would be used, this would be used from a planning perspective, an early conceptual perspective for a site. So we can actually look at road design, we can look at site planning. Very importantly, we can actually aggregate ArcGIS information in here. So you can see as part of the school design, we might need to look at water treatment. There's an additional pump house in here. You can see some of the hazardous markings, but we can actually go into the model itself, and it's the same for the likes of the school. We can look at the information from the actual school and walk within the building. So we're getting this interior environment to exterior environment in here where we can start looking at planning the actual building. And this is all part of the BIM processes where we build information models to make informed decisions very early. So I need to sketch a quick road along here, and this will really just show the power of how we would use early conceptual tools from a BIM perspective. I've got a road that knows the conditions as well, so it'll work to my any standards such as DMRB or UK standards I might want to put in. It'll connect the intersections there. I'm looking at the road there, and it's got slightly elevated from a cut and fill. So we can look at the cross section of the road, add in a PVI, and just soften that down a wee bit so we've got less cut and fill. So you can actually see that information will change live. So that will get fed back into the model, and again, we can integrate that back into Civil 3D as well. If I want to change the actual radius or turning head, I could maybe make that 8 meters. It'll understand the likes of any cars or any swept vehicle analysis. Unfortunately, I'm not going to show this today, but we'll do the likes of traffic simulations as well. If you want to study the traffic flow or even people flow along the junction. So it's a good way to actually visualize your actual model as part of the process. So what we're looking at here is the cut and fill. So you can see the red and green, the red being the cut area. We can go along the cross sections and just see if our road design is economical as part of that process. So rather than visualize it, we want to get a quick report. So we can see that our total net fill is about 300 cubic meters. Probably really want to reduce that to get it down to net balance to 0. But again, we can go back into the tools to do that as part of the process in there. As part of this planning, we might want to consider likes of building or visibility displays. So we might have a building annex or some other buildings that's going near the site. So there could be a concern at this junction in here. And I should add, no topographical surveys being created at this stage. This is using Austin data sets. This is early conceptual stuff before we go into any detailed design. So I'm looking at the right-hand turn. It's the red obstructions I'm looking for. It is saying that the building's an obstruction, but it hasn't given me a red cut through, so I might need to review that. If I look at my left-hand turn, this one's probably going to be clear as part of the process, and it's going to be fine. So it gives us optioneering options in there that we can actually look at, change the design, change the layout as part of this overall process. Okay, so what I really want to look at here is start to look at connecting this to ArcGIS, because Adam previously, he had created the street light information in here. I want to consume this and bring it into my model, because the ArcGIS user would be running several analysis, looking at drive times, looking at other analysis in their geospatial analysis that I won't be able to perform, but I want to make sure that I can aggregate that information in. So it's connecting to ArcGIS online through my organization. I should add, this is a bi-directional link. You'll get to see this as part of the process. We get to see our streetlights come in. Hasn't classified them properly. That can be changed. So if I go in, I can actually change that to lampposts. The good thing about the feature attributes, if these had heights against them, I could actually classify them. So the height is the height attribute. It actually brings it in at the appropriate height. It's the same for the type of streetlight or lamppost that we actually have in here. So I've got a concern over two. All the objects have come in, and I need to line these up. So as I've sketched my road, these two aren't actually lined up. So rather than communicate that directly with the ArcGIS user, what I'm going to do is edit the information directly in InfraWorks. That's what it looks like in ArcGIS online. I'm going to edit this information directly and save back. So I'm going to move it and align with the actual road. Do the same with the next one. Because this is database driven, I don't need to save it. It's automatically saving the data in the background. All I need to do is make sure that I go over to my data sources and use my refresh option to make sure that's actually saved back. It's interesting, it's saying that geometry is not supported. This was recorded at the end of last year. Properties actually are supported now. So if you change the property data, it will update. So you can see in here, if I do a quick refresh, we've now got that being aligned back to ArcGIS Online. So that's very powerful. We're actually changing information in InfraWorks to directly commit that information back. Equally so, if the ArcGIS user makes any changes to the model, we'll get that information back in our model as well. Couple things just to say in here, we can actually see the property information coming in from ArcGIS. So if I wanted to look at KPIs, so these lights have KPI scores, and maybe I have concerns that ones aren't making our target, I can theme that out. So you get to see this from a thematic control in here. So if I hit OK, you'll get to see the theme for the KPIs. And that's very important for asset owners, because asset owners might want to aggregate models to actually maybe visualize or publish this online. To actually use this information. And it's the same for like the elevation, the digital terrain model that's come in from OSNI. At my early conceptual stage, I might want to actually just visualize that, or any outputs that's common from ArcGIS. Okay, two last very quick videos to show in this, and one is basically if we're taking information back in. So say if we have information from assets that's been maintained in ArcGIS and we need to start a new project again, and we want to bring that back into the 3D model, how do we do this? So we can do this directly by connecting to ArcGIS Online. We're going to use the features that actually exist in these manholes and in these pipes. So you can see in here, we've got our features, which are manholes and pipes, and I'm going to use the attribute data to build it back into the model. So we have things like invert levels, cover levels, and pipe diameters. So I'm just going to assume the manhole size is 1.5, but I'm going to set the rim elevation and the depth. You have to use the negative depth value and put it in the correct position. So it actually gets the easting and northing, puts it in the depth of manhole or invert to the appropriate attribute that's come from ArcGIS. And it's the same for the pipes in here as well. I can specify the pipes. I can take the diameter actually from the diameter in the feature table or the attributes. I can look at the start and end inverts. And again, these aren't a 3D model. These are an ArcGIS. I'm populating them as a 3D model here. And when we populate that information, that will be actually aggregated in here. So you can see if I change the surface opacity, I've taken ArcGIS information and built it directly into the model. And that, as that ArcGIS information is being updated, that feeds back in. That is a bidirectional process as well as part of that, and it's got all that rich asset information. Okay, very last area in here, collector. This is a very cool tool. I did this around my house. Now this is again a video from last year. So It's really to show the power of how you can use collector to capture asset information. So I'm just going to I captured a couple of manhole covers around the septic tank of my house. And this is essentially my phone capturing the information, the access diameter, the invert level. But very importantly, we can push this information back into the civil environment or the InfraWorks environment for the user to consume. And that's very powerful because that's coming back live. There's no staleness as part of this. And that's part of the aspects that we're looking at BIM and GIS integration. The BIM authoring product and RTIS actually have that bidirectional connectivity. So you can see my manhole there. If I connect to RTIS, it's around Randallstown, County Antrim, I can bring that information in. That will get added in. So if we just look at my inlets, and it's data rich as well. So as any of that site information is actually getting captured and updated, if I refresh it, it'll come back into the model. As you know from earlier on, I can style this information, but I'm simply going to have a look at the attribute data in here, so which has come through directly from collector. So it's a very powerful way to actually get information from site directly to the BIM author environment, again, so you can actually make informed decisions as part of that process. Well, look, that's me. Thanks very much for your time. I'm actually going to hand you back to Adam in here. So I'm just going to take control back in. Make Adam presenter. So Adam, that should be you. You got control?
Yeah, I do indeed. Thanks very much for that, David. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Adam.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to finish off, I suppose, and I'm just going to show you quickly what those Revit models that David was talking about actually look like in ArcGIS Online, and you know the various options that you have there. While I'm doing that, it should only take 5 minutes, but while I'm doing that, if there's any questions, we have a couple of questions there already that we'll get to in the end, but any questions at all, just fire them on there while I'm showing you guys this. Okay, so in an ArcGIS Online environment, you can see I'm signed in, my username and password, and I'm in the Esri Ireland account. Now, what you'll notice is that, you know, at a first-hand glance, I can click on an object and it'll give me, you know, the various attributes, the various disciplines that's going on inside there. Okay, what I can also do then is if I go in, I can measure it. So it will pick up, you know, any kind of measurements that I do is I'll go into my slice tool. And allows me, this is really great, you can also rotate it around, okay? And you might be thinking, well, that's great, Pro. If I click on my layers here, I can start to put in buildings. So these are just polygons that have been extruded to a height, GIS data. And I can go in and they would have a height field in there. What I can also do is start, you know, symbolizing based on maybe I can turn off everything else, the walls, the stairs, generic model. Okay, and start playing around with it there. GIS Online web scenes is I have this thing down the bottom called bookmarks. Now if I click on mechanical, there's within it has unique attribute information. I can do it for pipes, and I can visualize the exterior. Then is this one here. So actually what most of our customers do, connections that they can go in. If a tree is a point that has an associated height, size it differently. But that's just the would look in ArcGIS Online. And again, you start overlaying your GIS data, your environment for visualization. Okay, so we'll open it up to a Q&A. If anybody has any questions, I see there's a question there. What version of ArcGIS do you need to directly read Revit models? That is ArcGIS Pro 2.4 and up. Can you connect to ArcGIS Enterprise rather than AGOL? Yes, of course you can, from 10.7, I believe. Absolutely possible. So a question here, one thing that is not clear to me as a GIS user, I don't know much about BIM, is compatibility between layer formats. Are both outputs shapefiles and Revits? So I suppose, David, you can hop in here as well if you want. But
Yeah.
I suppose from a GIS perspective, you know, it's whatever you want. So shapefiles direct reads in ArcGIS, of course. Revit also direct reads. If you're dealing with anything, I suppose, you know, AutoCAD files such as DWGs, DXFs, while they are direct reads for visualization, if you wanted to publish them up, or any IFC files that you have as well would need to be brought into, you know, something such as ArcGIS Pro, collated then into a GIS ready format, such as a file geodatabase or a scene layer package, and then published up.
Yeah, so Revit, Adam, has no direct connection with our GIS Online. I'm going to say as yet as part of that process, but what we did is we made a connection through a database, through SQL, essentially, in the back. But Revit fully supports the likes of IFC as well for interoperability. The other thing in there as well is, you know, we're considering the wider asset information, just populating information back in, because we have those models as part of the process. But for Civil 3D and InfraWorks, yes, that information is directly read from ArcGIS or the Geo database. In many ways, we've really moved away from shapefiles. This has been quite a number of years ago. We've been exporting and importing shapefiles, but it's a direct read now. In fact, you can edit the information as part of that. And I should say as well, the traditional CAD user can actually use the ArcGIS plugin, so you're not limited to the likes of Civil 3D. You can use the ArcGIS plugin as well.
Yep, awesome. Next question there. What is the collector app that David used to populate the Civil 3D model? Is it geo-referenced?
The collector, that was Esri Collector, so it was, that I was using there, Adam, and it was just populating the information directly through, it was just coming in from ArcGIS.
So word noting there that, you know, Esri provide a whole suite of mobile and tablet apps. They work online and offline. The most extreme example, we have a customer who goes off to Iceland, you know, for a few months, environmental consultant, and he takes all his maps, surveys offline, goes to Iceland, and then when he has Wi-Fi in a hotel, he syncs it back up. But I suppose to answer your question, what is the collector app? That's available, Google Play, iTunes, Windows. All you need is an ArcGIS creator account to log in, username and password, or field worker, depending on your ArcGIS setup. And absolutely, it is geo-referenced. So any data that you collect in either Collector or any of our mobile apps is fully geo-referenced. Can you please clarify the BIM data format that is read by AGOL? So there's quite a few that David mentioned there, but in terms of the BIM data format, so that'd be, what's the what's the file extension for Revit? RVT files.
RVT, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. That's all the questions for now. Any latecomers? No. Going once, twice. Okay, cool. So I suppose we'll end it there. Thanks very much, David, for your time. Thanks very much, everybody, for dialing in. If
Thanks,
you
Adam.
would like to get in contact with us, what I'd suggest is, if you're an Esri customer or on the Esri side of things, contact me. My email is sales@esri-ireland.ie. And if you're on the Pentagon side of things, I'd say contact David, and
Yep.
we'll happily tee up a meeting.
Yep.
Do you have an email that people can reach you by, David?
David@pentagonsolutions.com. Or you just go to our website, www.pentagonsolutions.com. You'll reach us there, either or.
Yeah, perfect. So if you want to find out anything more about the topics we've covered today, including the Collector app and what it can do for your organization, please do get in touch. We're more than happy to tee up calls. All right, perfect. Have a great day, everybody.
Cheers, Adam.
Cheers, David.